Hi, and welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today, I want to continue our discussion on morale and talk about the common mistakes that leaders make to kill morale. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. I'm Kale Houser. Thank you so much for joining me today. So I was thinking a lot about the last podcast and about morale and how critical it is to your organization. And I thought, instead of just leaving you kind of to your own devices to figure out and decide on your own what you may be doing to kill morale in your workplace, I thought I'd go through some examples. And this is the first of what's probably going to be a two-part series. Will depend on how we go and how deep we get into this. But just methods that leaders commonly make that kill morale of their organization, whether that be in the individual, which inevitably leads to affect the organization, or blanket kills the whole organization as a whole, right? With policies that you may institute or take away, things of that nature. So we'll get right into it. So first of all, again, as we get right into it, first of all, as a review, right? I believe morale is absolutely critical and the linchpin of your organization to its success or to its failure. Okay, you ignore morale in your corporation, in your business, in your workplace, and at your peril. It will affect you one way or another, and we here at Kale Houser Leadership are trying to get it to affect you in the positive, to make sure that people are bought into your culture, and that's done through you, making sure you're confident as a leader, making sure you're connected to your teammates, and making sure you're inspiring them to their best. Okay, so first of all, I would be remiss if I did not bring up mass punishment. Hopefully you heard my previous episode on group punishment and mass punishment. I think I even titled it "Group Punishment is Stupid," to make sure there's no misconceptions of my thoughts on the matter. If you, as a leader, I'm talking to you right now, as a leader of your organization, are using methods of mass punishment that are applicable in mass to your whole organization, whether that's like your 2 employees or whether that's your 25 or 50 employees, you're in the wrong. You should stop doing that immediately. And if you think about it and you look at the results of that, you probably already see that it is not getting the desired result that you were hoping for. Okay, I won't go too far into this aspect of why this kills morale, other than people will inevitably realize that no matter what they do, your top performers especially, and every organization has them, whether you have 2 people, there's always one that kind of does better than the other, or you've got 50, there's probably a good 5 or 8 that are just your best, cream of the crop. They realize that no matter what they do, how many clients they close, how many widgets they produce, they will be punished the same as the least common denominator in your organization, right? And there's always that person too. And they may not be totally inept, I'm not talking about that, but just that person that does not produce or perform as well as some of your other people in your organization. And mass punishment to affect change in the one that needs to have that additional training, that needs that additional push and encouragement, or straight out punishment for something they did blatantly wrong, is a way to kill your morale. I would argue that it is the number one way to kill the morale in your organization, which then will lead to all kinds of other issues in your organization. People will quit. People will stop going to bat for your organization. You'll lose that culture. You'll lose that loyalty. All those things that were discussed previously in the critical nature of morale podcast right before this one. Okay, so I think enough said on mass punishment. You get my drift. We'll talk in future episodes about what we can do to increase morale, but right now we want to correct the mistakes before we start putting in the actions, because no matter what positive actions you put in place, if you're still making the negative ones, it's not going to matter, right? You're not going to affect change. In fact, you're just going to sow more distrust in your organization. You'll be almost kind of two-faced a little bit. Okay, so get rid of mass punishment if you are doing that. Hopefully, this only applies to a small percentage of you that are interested in being leaders or are leaders in your organization. But statistics say, and because I'm talking about it right now, it's a thing and it is still happening, okay? The other one that came to mind is you as the leader, you as the boss, as the manager, supervisor, whatever your role may be that has you listening to this podcast and has you thinking about how to be a better leader in your organization, you spend the preponderance of your time helping or focusing with those employees or teammates who struggle to keep up with production, and whatever that production looks like in your business, right? Whether that's calling clients, making cold calls, making pizzas, whatever the case is in your organization and what you produce to provide income and generate business, you focus a lot, if not entirely, on those poor performers, those ones that struggle to keep up, those ones that are struggling to get the processes down or to understand the processes, and thus ignoring sometimes completely your top performers, which we all know it's been statistically proven in almost every organization. Your top performers, whether they be just a handful of people or probably your top 5 or 10% of your employees, produce over 80% of your revenue or outcome. Again, whatever you produce to earn business. And as the leader, it's similar to the mass punishment. If you are focusing all your time on those poor performers, and you may be doing it to try to get them to the top performer level. You may be doing it to try to, not have to fire them, to give them that second chance. They may just not be getting it. But there's a difference between additional training and attention versus focusing solely on that, right? It's kind of like focusing only on the 1-inch hole in the wall of your dam that's leaking water and ignoring the 1,000 other 1/4-inch holes, okay? You can't do that because it's the 1/4-inch holes, the 1,000 of them, that's going to drown you. And it's the same thing if you ignore your top performers, and they may be self-sufficient, they may have a proven record, they may be around a long time, but as they see that you are ignoring them, and especially if you're not rewarding them with additional ways or making them promotable, things of that nature that shows that you trust them more on a daily basis, because people just need that reinforcement, especially in a workplace environment. They will inevitably start to feel that resentment and they'll start to disconnect from you, even to the point where they're like, we don't even need Boss Joe over there anymore. Like, I'm running this department all on my own, and our department head is so focused on, snivelly Pete over there, that they start disconnecting, and that's when you almost start creating your own competition, again, depending on what kind of industry you're in. They're like, well, I'm going to go open my own shop over here because I've already proven that I've got all the customer relations, I've got all the clients, I'm totally self-sufficient as far as, any sort of upper management. Why don't I just become my own boss? Okay. So that's something to think about, is how much time and energy and focus are you putting on, again, this sounds a little cruel, but on your least common denominator employees, versus making sure you're checking in and paying attention and seeing, what is motivating and keeping your top performers going. Okay, you don't want to ignore those. It definitely is a more whole organization approach, and you can't ignore the problem child, certainly, but you also, for want of trying to fix the problem child, you can't ignore your star, your stellar. Okay. So third would be you as the leader being focused solely on your own vision and agenda for your organization, and not sharing it with your team. So you may be the sole business owner, like the no kidding, you've got all the money laid down, you've got all the sweat equity, you're at that point finally, maybe this past year you've hired a couple of employees, but you're used to just being your solopreneur, right? That one person in charge, not responsible to anybody else. And that certainly may be the case, but you now have people on your team that you are responsible for, okay? Responsible for providing them a workplace. They've trusted you enough that they've thrown their lot in with you in the form of using you and your business as a means to provide for them and their family. So you have a responsibility for that. And when you go and have that focus of it's only about me, it's about my vision and my agenda, you create this culture of you're either with me or you're against me. Okay, there generally is no room for middle ground when it comes to that, because you're not sharing your vision and your agenda with your team. You're not getting that buy-in from them to help bring them along and create that culture as part of an overall team. Okay, it's strictly your way or the highway, and this is the direction we're going. I will brook no discussion about it, or definitely no argument about it, and you can take a hike if you don't like it. That, if you haven't guessed, will kill morale in your workplace, because they know at that point they're literally just employees. They are no more useful or important to you than the shovel to dig a hole. Okay, they are a tool to you. They are not a part of your team anymore, and that will tank the morale of your organization. And even if you do that for only 1 or 2 employees, that will spread to your other employees because they see that. Okay, and then lastly, I want to talk, at least for today, about you, and you hear this a lot as kind of a cliche of an email boss. Okay, so you're so swamped, and you may have completely valid reasons for this, real practical reasons of how busy you are, right? You're working 18-hour days. You're there until the wee hours of the morning, and then you're pounding 12 espressos to just get up and go on the next day to do it all over again. But you stay so busy in your office that you never intentionally take the time to check in on your people. Whether that be on a weekly basis, whether that be on a daily basis, again, depending on the size of your organization and what it is that you do and how available that you be. It could be that you're a traveling salesman and you don't have that opportunity to, but that, in today's culture, there's no excuse for it, right? Zoom, Skype, whatever video meeting software that you may use, even just FaceTime on your phone, like, hey Bob, how's it going? I know I'm in Minneapolis this week and I'm going to be here all week, but I just wanted to check, how's your daughter doing? I know you said she was coming down with a cold, right? It's that checking in with people that keeps them engaged with you, especially as you get busier. You need to be more purposeful about this. So you do not want to be that email boss. And the military, holy smokes, notorious for this, because it is so much easier, because you're not responsible to anyone. As the commander, you have no responsibility to your underlings. You can just sit up there and boom, forward this email, right? That was the favorite whenever you got the email from your commander that was just a forward from some other commander. Like, they didn't even add why or how applicable. It was just the assumption of, I forwarded this to you, so you better read it, it's important, right? Like, what do I care about some other random colonel at another base and whatever is going on there? Like, just more often than not, guess what? Delete. So I want to make sure that you're not becoming that email boss. And then secondly, that ties in with this, is if you say you have an open door policy, you better have an open door policy and honor it and respect it. Because people will test it. They will not test it, but they will try to make use of it, especially if you've advertised that, like, yes, Susan, I have an open door policy. If you have any issues or complaints or suggestions, please let me know. Knock on my door. I'm here for you. I want to listen. And Susan does that, and you're like buried in paperwork. And it, again, may be a totally valid excuse, but you have made that proclamation to your workplace, and you need to honor it. Because the second you don't, especially if it's the first time, it's over. They're not coming to you anymore, no matter how many times you say you have an open door policy, because it's just one of those things that everyone knows you just say and that you don't honor. Like, you're really not that interested, and you may be interested, but you just don't prioritize it to make it worth their while to do. I had a story for this, but we're already starting to get a little long, so I'm going to leave you a little cliffhanger about one of the ways that I still think about today that just absolutely murdered my morale during an exercise that we were doing in California. My commander, something else, let me just tell you that. I'll save that for probably tomorrow when we discuss a couple more ways that leaders make mistakes that kill morale of their organization. Again, thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to continuing this discussion tomorrow. And in the meantime, if you have examples of any of these, again, that you have gone through personally or that you maybe disagree with, please let me know. Drop me a line at kalehouserleadership.com. Again, no matter where you're at in the world, I appreciate you. Have a fantastic afternoon. Bye.